Many of us come from bodies that were brutalized for hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of years. That charge we had to organize our communities around that charge. So when we get into a relationship with somebody, that charge presents itself.
Welcome to Deeply Well. I'm your host, Devi Brown, and as always, we are diving into the crevices in service to expansion. This episode, I am so excited to bring back to the show one of, by far, the most cult classic favorite episodes. Like the amount of messages I got about the episode that I did last season with this amazing man was just through the roof. People were asking for part 10. So we'll see what we can do. We're definitely on the second today. I am joined by none other than healer, best-selling author, master coach, or organizational strategist. Healer, again, I have to say, a longtime therapist and a licensed clinical social worker who specializes in the healing of trauma. He's also the founder of the Cultural Somatics Institute, a cultural trauma navigator and a communal provocateur and coach. Last time Resmaa was here, we spoke about one of his best-selling books, My Grandmother's Hands, which radically changed the world of healing to this approach that he developed over many, many decades. He then led the charge, really speaking to the divide that we've been experiencing in America with the quaking of America. And now he is back with another book to fuel us and feed us in this very paradigm-shifting moment of human history, Monsters in Love. Welcome to the show, Resmaa Menakem.
Thank you for having me, sis.
You know what's so interesting? So you're a healer. I'm a healer. Anytime we share space, instant regulation.
Yeah.
Don't have to do anything.
Right.
The vibrational energy is just, you've set in, you're centered, you're grounded. Monsters in Love. This is a big book. I had the pleasure of, at the time of recording now, last night, you and I were in community.
That's right.
And I was able to do a Q&A with you on your new book with your community. And it was absolutely mind-blowing, the way that you were diving into what feels like a completely new approach for so many people and understanding love, understanding their role in love and in relationship, and especially in speaking to relationship as a tool of healing and transformation, its intended use, the way God designed it. What led you to say now is the time to speak to this piece of the healing puzzle?
Monsters in Love is actually kind of like a remake, right? So my second book was a book called Rock the Boat. Rock the Boat was originally with another publisher. The publisher went out of business. I got my rights back. Right. And between the time I first wrote that book and now, I've evolved. I've grown just in terms as a therapist, as a healer, as somebody who works with other bodies. I'm not the same dude I was when I wrote it. Right. And so when I got the rights back, I just put it to the side. And as I started to go back and read it again, there were parts that now I'm like, oh, I want to change that. I'm not the same person. I'm not the same therapist. I'm not the same healer. My eye in terms of what happens in relationships is different. It's more mature now. And so Monsters in Love was really about how I began to integrate some of my own learning, some of my own emergence. And so I think why it's relevant now is I actually think because of all of the things that I've done before, it led me up to a place to where I said, oh, now I can work with the couples work the same way I work with communal work. I can do the couples work the same way I do organizational work. I can do the couples work now. And it took me years to get to that place. And so that's why I think Monsters in Love is so important now, is because this idea of understanding historical, intergenerational, persistent institutional, race, sex, sexuality, like all of those pieces, I think we're at a place now where we maybe possibly can hold it.
You know, it's just so divine, I think, the placements of your books, because I even am recognizing how your work is building tolerance.
Yeah.
In everyone
That's the whole
that reads
thing.
it. Yeah.
The attempt is to get us practiced, right?
Yes.
I use this analogy. Like if I called you one day and I said, hey, Devi, I'm thinking about running a marathon. And you've been my sister, you go, oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's really cool. You know, anything I can do to support you, And we would go back and forth. And then you might get the bright idea to ask me a question, right? You might say, hey, when do you have an idea in your mind when you're thinking about running this marathon? And if I looked at you and I said, I'm thinking about running it tomorrow, right? You'd go, okay, I got to ask another question now, right? And if you say, well, have you been running? Right? Have you been watching what you eat? Have you run a block first? And if I looked at you in all seriousness and I said, no, but I read a book on it, right? No, but I talked to a dude who ran, right? You'd get concerned about me now, right? You would have to reality test with me, because what you know is that I'm about to put my body through something that I am unprepared to contend with.
Yeah.
And relationships are the same thing.
Yeah.
We are unprepared to deal with the charge of what it means when I say I choose you, right? And we all think just because we choose a person, we're ready for the charge. We're ready for the weight. We're ready for the speed. We're ready for the texture, and we are not. And so Monsters in Love is really my attempt for us to begin to say, slow it down.
Yeah.
Let's start doing the things that get us conditioned so we can hold what is about to come from an historical place, from an intergenerational place, from a persistent institutional place, and then our own personal lived experiences.
Yes. Okay, let's start at the top. Because this book, it's a phenomenal book. And my deepest desire for anyone tapping into the show today and resonating with our voices and hearing us is to help you create a new understanding of the way relationship works in your unique life based on who you are and your experiences, so that you can alleviate suffering and find more joy in them and use them as the tools they're actually designed to be. So I want to start at the top with you. Talk to me about the intended evolution of relationship, because this is a piece that we have all always gotten wrong.
Right.
And society has really primed us for this, right? Like even back to the Disney movie days.
Absolutely.
When we're wearing those traditional roles of provider and support, however, they've showed up for you in your life or in your culture. But there is always this blueprint that I would say never actually feels authentic to anyone.
Yeah.
And it's based on timetables that are so simple and don't actually have like a sacred weight to it.
Yeah.
It's like meet, fall in love, have sex somewhere in the midst of all that.
That's right.
And get engaged, get married, have a child.
That's right.
Retire.
That's right.
And then, and it's like, yeah, okay. And what about the individuals doing those things?
Yeah.
So if you would share with us, what is really the intended evolution and even purpose for intimate relationship?
Yeah. So one of the things that happens is that we have all been conditioned by our understanding of relationship, either through our caregivers, through the messages that we receive on TV, in movies, what our friends say to us about what the correct way is to do things and be things, right? And what ends up happening is that we miss what actually, we're so conditioned that if I meet somebody and I have butterflies in my stomach, and if I meet somebody and I have this like magical thing that happens between, happens between us, and I know this is the person, we have been conditioned to believe that that is what should be from now on.
Yes.
Right. And like I said last night, the only purpose of that is to draw you together. The only purpose of those particular pieces is to present like when you first get together, the only thing you're really sharing is commonalities and things that you both agree to, right? It's serving its purpose. But then there's another purpose that happens, and that's beginning to highlight and show the things that you don't agree with. And that's when we think something is going wrong. That's when we think that our partner is not the right person for us. That's when we start thinking communication and compatibility issues are coming up. And what I'm saying is if we could begin to slow it down and see that there is a purpose, a function for expressing your differences and how you move in the world differently and understand the world. There is a function of it. It is not the problem. There is a function of it. And we as particularly here in America, we haven't inquired or interrogated what the function of that is. And the function of it is designed to make you begin to work with the energy around being connected to somebody that's important to you, that matters to you, and maintaining a clear sense of yourself while you're doing it, and being able to soothe your own hurts and your pains while you're doing it. It is not either for them to turn themselves over to you or for you to turn yourself over to them. Right? And that kind of Disney conditioning is like, turn yourself over.
Yeah.
They kiss you and you wake up from a sleep and now you're the princess, right? Or now you're the prince and you say, right? And we all go into relationships with some and it doesn't matter if I'm talking about heterosexual relationships, homosexual relationships, or any other relationship where there's two people, right? It doesn't matter. We all have been conditioned by it, and we have not interrogated it, so it always shows up as a bottleneck, as a gridlock. And our only conditioning in terms of like psychology and marriage therapy and all that different type of stuff revolves around, well, let's just find out the problem, alleviate the problem, and fix the problem. And what's really going on is that there is a piece in you that's asking you to grow the hell up, right? To grow up in ways that you have been able, because you haven't been with somebody, you've been able to get to that line and then figure out a way around it, right? And what that suffering's edge does when you choose another person, what the suffering's edge does is the suffering edge says, look, you can find a way around it. You can bring another person in. You can act like it's all their problem. You can do all of that. And this particular time, let's not do that. Let's not blow all of this through our partner. Let's actually sit with this and not take it all on ourselves, but actually work with the energy of what is beckoning me. But before I met this person, what is the thing? What is the purpose that's tied to my integrity? The gnawing that's happening for me right now. I always tell people the gnawing is health. The gnawing is not health. And what we've been taught is to kill the gnawing or get rid of the gnawing and not metabolize the energy that's creating the gnawing.
Okay. Sit there, please. Please, 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 please. This gives me chills because this is part of the reason I believe bodies of culture and those that have experienced complex trauma of all backgrounds.
Come on.
The fight is to come into your body often for the first time. That is the biggest, the hardest, the most important piece of the puzzle for healing. You have to be present for your life. You have to be present inside this vessel that's been designed to hold your soul. So very often in some of our communities, there is this charge that we don't have language for around all kinds of things. When anger comes up, when love comes up, when desire comes up, it's a feeling that is so foreign because many of us are robbed of the opportunity to feel, to know how, to learn how. So you are just having these experiences inside that you don't know how to talk about. You don't know what their intended purpose is. And so it's so overwhelming and it makes you completely jump out of yourself, very often detach, shut down, all the things that keep us from ourselves and one another. That's the baseline, right? So as you're speaking to these feelings, right, like even that feeling of desire that can first come up. And for some, it can be the feeling of, oh my God, this is the one, right? And for others, it's just that lustful feeling or that passionate feeling.
Or terror.
Okay. Can you talk about this piece and why in your first book, you really masterfully unpack the understanding of needing to build tolerance to receive good things. And that exists in our loving relationships too.
So think about it like this, sibling. Many of us come from bodies that were brutalized for hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of years. Like legally brutalized, right? Those nervous systems got shaped around the brutalization. Okay?
Wow.
It is a relatively new occurrence, right? That me and you could be sitting here doing what we're doing and have some sense of sovereignty over our own bodies. For most of me and your history, the white body had full and unfettered access to our bodies.
Wow.
Full and unfettered. I mean, every idea, every orifice, there was no protection.
Oof.
So that charge we had to organize our communities around that charge. We had to organize our nervous systems around that charge. So when we get into a relationship with somebody, that charge presents itself and it can look like terror. It can look like horror. It can look like rejection. It can look like anxiety. It can look like depression. That's because it's been decontextualized and we internalize it as a personal defect as opposed to it being structural and philosophical.
Oh my God.
So when we as Black bodies come into contact with each other, even if I love you, the historical charge also floods into the room without context and without understanding and without moorings to navigate it. And so part of our work is to slow it down enough to allow the energy to condition us. Many times what we do is we gorge on it rather than nibble on it. We want it all, but we can't tolerate it, so we break apart. So we push away at the same time that we're saying, come closer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That has to be, that's because what happened to us did not happen to us individually. It happened to us communally. So only developing an individual response to a communal horror is inadequate. Part of the reason why many of us can't be in relationships or have a very difficult time in relationships is because we've been seeing this whole process as an individual endeavor, as opposed to what happened to our peoples and how our people's bodies got organized around the brutality and the feralness. And so what I try and help our people do, sis, is first slow it down, orient, move your bodies, touch your body, watch. Like one of the practices that I have in my grandmother's hands is just get in front of a mirror. I can't tell you how many times people say they skip over that practice. Just take your clothes off and stand in front of a mirror. And notice how long you can stand there. Now, sometimes you just look and you pack off. There's nothing going wrong. It's too much. You notice there's too much charge. Walk away. Then come back again. This is the conditioning. It'd be the same way if I was trying to show you how to shoot a jump shot or show you how to throw a punch, right? You can't throw one punch and you're conditioned. You don't understand nuance yet. Right? And for our people, we've been conditioned that if you choose somebody, you're already conditioned. You're not conditioned. And so when all of this charge and weight and texture comes into the room with somebody that you love, you don't know what to do with it. Even if you have the experience that this is a good thing, it's also vulnerable. It's a good thing. It's also terrifying. And we haven't interrogated that individually, in a couple, or communally. Good breath, good breath, good breath, good breath.
Can you expand on the terror of vulnerability?
Yeah.
And how that keeps us from love, from our own love, and from connection with someone you really want to have love with.
That's right. So when you're out here just running wild and ripping wild, and you know what I mean?
Sowing seeds.
You sowing, yeah, you sowing. You doing the thing, right? When you out here doing that, there's a lot of choices. You got a lot of choices, a lot of moves you can make, right? The moment you say, I choose you, it shifts. And we all know it. People say it all the time. Before we got married, it was cool. Soon as we moved in together, they lost their mind.
If that ain't the exact phrase that you hear
constantly.
Right.
Yeah. And it's because the reason why we say that is because we haven't interrogated and slowed down enough to really unpack what that means. When we say that, we make it a particular personal thing. Like she lost her mind, he lost their mind, they lost their minds, right?
Yes.
But there's actually a function in that, right? The moment when I'm out here wilding and ripping and running, and I'm by myself, I have infinite choices and moves that I can make. There is nobody who has more say-so and control over my life than me. There is no influence that I have to negotiate, right? But the moment I say, baby, let's move in together, at that exact moment, my choices become finite. When my choices become finite, I get pushed up against my development in that exact moment. Because I never had to get pushed when I was by myself or just dating. The moment I say, let's move in together, my choices become finite. More of what I do and don't do revolves around what you do and don't want to do. I immediately come to my vulnerability at that moment. And soon as you come to your vulnerability at that moment, you try and figure out a way to lessen the vulnerability. And many times, I say this one thing I've said a lot. Many times people have affairs in relationships, not because the partner is not important. It is because the partner is too important for them to actually show themselves to.
Okay.
It's really easy to go find somebody in the club and tell them all of the things that I want, that look like all of the intimate things and all of the secrets and all that stuff. But that person that's laying there on the pillow with me, they are too important for me to let them see these parts of me. So I'll do it with somebody I pick up in the club or pick up at church or pick up, right?
Yeah.
But this person, because it matters to me what happens to their eyes when I say, hey, I really want to do this thing. If I can't maintain a clear sense of myself, when I look in your eyes, I'll start to shave it and move it around and not say it and not express it, because the look of disgust in your face, I can't tolerate. And it seems like that's a problem for you, but it's actually a problem for me. Am I going to grow parts of myself up? Am I going to develop the ability to moor myself so even with you, I can let you see me behind my eyeballs and hold on to myself at the same time? Most people can't do that when they say, I choose you. I can do it with somebody in the club, but not you, because it actually matters when I see disgust. It actually matters when you say, I ain't doing, that's nasty. If I can't maintain a clear sense of myself, then I'm going to either make you give yourself up in order for me to feel better, or I'm going to give myself up in order for me to feel better. And nothing's going wrong when that happens. That's the function. It forces you up against, are you going to be clean about this or are you going to be dirty about this? That's it.
Yeah.
Adults don't get a choice between pain and no pain. Adults get a choice between, am I going to do this clean or am I going to do this dirty? The choice, the other choice of possibly not having as much pain, that happens after you make this one.
Wow.
Does that make sense? Does this make
sense?
Okay.
Yeah, it makes deep sense. And I think, anyone listening, because that hits on a lot for a lot of people. And that piece, part of the way we were just speaking to it was a little more sexual in nature, but that vulnerability piece is with everything.
With everything.
Right? With absolutely every function of every kind of relationship, not just a coupling or a romantic partnership.
Right. So there are particular things in relationships that we say let's just agree to disagree, that we actually can't agree to disagree about.
Ooh, tell me.
Right? You can't agree to disagree to have half a baby. Like if somebody is in a relationship and you're in a relationship with somebody and you want to have a baby and your partner doesn't, there is no agree to disagree with that.
Yeah.
You are going to grind. You are going to fight because it is about importance. Is this important to you? The agree to disagree is usually a way to get around the most ardent issue that's about usually people's integrity.
Yes.
Right? We're going to have to rub and grind and fight and then see what emerges from that.
Yeah.
And people don't want to do that.
Yes.
They want to come into a therapist and pay the therapist all that money for them to figure out to get a solution for the problem. There is no solution. Yeah. There's only emergence. Grow up. And you keep not wanting to grow up.
Yeah.
This is a conundrum that is not to be fixed. Does that make sense?
Deeply. What I'm hearing especially is, part of the reason there's no solution and there is nothing to be fixed is because there is something that must be created. And that creation will either be two deciding that there will be a shared interest, a shared desire that they feed
over time,
and or we are going in two separate ways.
That's right.
And now it's time to create our individual paths.
And it becomes clear when you do it cleanly as opposed to going around it.
Can we speak on the importance of integrity?
Yes.
And can you give, because, I think something within a lot of our communities is we have different definitions than perhaps other people. We've learned words, applied uses to words in different ways, right? So if you would share your definition of integrity and how that operates in relationship.
Integrity is that thing that's literally tied to creation and purpose. Integrity is that thing that when you're by yourself, that gnaws at you that says, this could be different.
Yes.
And you're not.
Yes.
In alignment with what could be.
Yes.
Right?
Not in alignment with what could be.
Integrity is that piece that says I'm tied to something other than just what I want. I'm tied to creation itself. It gnaws at you. It's not butterflies on your nose, right? It's not like love and rainbows. It is the thing that says, are you going to live into the person you want to be? And also be connected to other human beings that are important to you. Now, that might not, you may get the answer coming from the other side. That's the other side where the person says, I don't want to do this with you anymore. Yeah. Right? But though that decision can come from integrity or fear. And many times we haven't been conditioned and honed to know what the integrity piece, how that senses in our body, how we notice it. Yeah. We know the fear piece. We know what that terror is like. And what I'm trying to get people to understand is that there's a resource here. There's another resource that will allow us to work with it differently. But it has to be cultivated.
It has to be cultivated. The way that I experience integrity, it's my North Star. So integrity for me is like that internal GPS.
That's exactly right.
I have a deep commitment to my integrity. So it's like, even if it's something I really want, if that feeling comes in, it doesn't matter.
That's right.
You have to follow the internal guidance.
And a lot of people, and this is why I talk about conditioning and tempering, like the running of the marathon. A lot of people think that this is something that does not have to be cultivated. Yeah. We think we should have it. Yeah. Right? And there is a piece that's tied to creation that we have, but a lot of us haven't cultivated our embodied sense of it. Yes. Right? Yes. So what looks like integrity is really intractability, right? Is that I'm steadfast, right? People mistake those types of things sometimes as integrity when it's really another way around things sometimes. And this is the interrogation pieces, right? Yeah. And so a lot of my work is really about slowing down to give yourself enough time to interrogate things. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I want to speak about practices. One of the things that we talked about last night as we were kind of diving into your book and the Q&A was around not when you're in a space like this as a couple, perhaps, right? When you are a monster in love, it's not about creating more shared experiences as a couple.
Right, right.
Can you please talk about this piece?
Yeah. So I think about it like, when we get into a relationship with somebody and the quote unquote two shall become one, right? Type of thing. And we're living our lives, right? And, this is one of the problems I have when people say my better half, right? as if you were half and the other person made you whole. The moment you start working with that concept, if somebody's half of you, they get say so in everything, right? It is a we purposely put ourselves in vulnerable positions, right? Because we've been conditioned to do so. This idea of half and this idea of the two shall become one puts us in a position to where our partners it's what I call reflected sense of self, right? Mm-hmm. Reflected sense of self, and this is from one of my mentors, Dr. Davis Narsh. Reflected sense of self is that when I look at you, my sense of who I am is reflected in your eyes back to me. Mm. So if you love me, I'm lovable. If you're disappointed in me, I'm disappointing. Mm-hmm. Right? And a lot of us have those types of relationship with people. And so we don't have any sense of our own sense of self. Mm-hmm. My sense is of a other sense of self as opposed to my own sense of self myself, right? Yeah. It's both, right? It matters to me what you think about me, but it matters to me what I think about me. Too, right? Not letting go of you in order to be with me. I can hold both. That's the conditioning pieces, right? Mm-hmm. And so for me, a lot of times what happens in relationships is these concepts around being in or your better half, your partner being your better half, pushes us into gridlocks, right? That could be emergent, could help us grow up, but a lot of times just keep us at each other's throat. Yeah. Right? Because you matter too much, right? And when I say that, I'm not saying I'm trying to, that you shouldn't matter to me. I'm saying many times your mattering supersedes my mattering. Do you see what I mean?
Is that a real question? You be asking me that question.
I just want to make sure, because sometimes I'm not, like, my agent keeps telling me that I'm a polymath, which means like I think at these different levels, and sometimes I'm not sure if if I'm doing
you're
right.
With
okay,
someone that
okay,
speaks that
okay,
language
good,
too.
good,
yeah,
good.
I love the nuance of healing.
Good.
You know, that's where the sweet spot is.
Yeah.
Something that I want to really, Resmaa and I are talking really large concepts. Mm-hmm. Like these are actually the things that we're kind of maybe even sound casual about that we are expressing right now are the fundamental pieces, the foundational pieces of how we know love or don't, how we love or hate ourselves throughout our lives,
Absolutely.
What we're able to have access to. So something I really want to center for everyone listening is the gravity of this, right? Like this piece that you just expressed, talking about the inner workings, talking about the mechanisms that take place in people of how, for instance, a lot of language that is important that we're discussing, but is sometimes misunderstood or overly labeled, is the dynamic of like a narcissistic relationship or a codependent relationship. And granted, if you find yourself with a narcissist, please run fast.
Absolutely.
And a lot of what Resmaa just described is what is going on inside of that body of the narcissist and inside of the body of what is often referred to as the empathic person or the codependent person. And so it's about really juggling an againstness of self and trying to find an outlet for it while also not revealing too much about oneself and being committed to not being seen. And when you're committed to not being seen, we cause irreparable harm to one another and to our family systems, right? And so generationally, because it's such a wide view, this is how it happens. Right. And so in the day-to-day programming, it may not seem like that big of a deal, right? It may just be like, oh man, we don't never get along.
That's right.
Oh yeah, we're arguing. It's okay if the kid's here. You're in the thick of it. It seems natural. It seems normal. And it seems on par with what you're seeing in the rest of society on television, your friends, your family.
That's right.
But those mechanisms that seem like the smaller pieces, those are the seeds that create generational harm, generational trauma,
Absolutely.
and keep us from being able to love each other.
Absolutely. so I want to be clear here, just as a therapist, that there are a lot of terms that we use that people don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people are using, oh, they're a narcissist, they're a this, they're a that, they're, and really that's a diagnosis. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the idea, so this piece around narcissism and being a narcissist, the underlying piece, like narcissism, borderline, all of these different things. You know what the root of all of those is? Trauma. We don't want to talk about that. Somebody who has a narcissistic personality, that is really, if you peel back the edges, most people who have a narcissistic personality have demonstrative trauma.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not even talking about the historical stuff yet.
Yeah.
I'm not even talking about the intergenerational stuff yet. Right? I'm not even talking about the persistent institutional stuff yet. Personally, many times these people have horrible trauma.
Yeah.
Right?
Immense self-hate.
Immense and brutality.
Yeah.
Right? And so I just really try and, sometimes, when you're dealing with somebody that is harming you, sometimes the best thing that you can do for you and them is not allow them to harm you anymore.
Yes. That's the choice.
That's the choice.
That's the choice.
And
it's
so
not a fixing.
That's right.
It's a removing.
And so for me, rather than trying okay, this person is narcissistic, this person is this person is, borderline and bipolar and all that different type of stuff. I think we would be better served, especially in relationships, especially in our communities and in communities of culture. I believe that we would be better served by really understanding that sometimes you get into a relationship with somebody who you need to not be in a relationship with.
Yeah.
And that usually the things that show up in the relationship are teaching you and telling you to make moves. And a lot of times you don't make the move. That goes back to the integrity pieces, right? I've worked with clients sometimes and they'll come in and they'll say things like, I keep picking the wrong person. Help me pick better people. And the thing I always say is, the common denominator in this whole piece is you. What aren't you inquiring into? Right? I'm not saying that for you to try and find what the defect is. I'm saying there's a particular patterning that keeps showing up in terms of the people that you're bringing into your life. If you refuse to inquire into that and you keep saying it's them, you're going to be doing this for the next 40 years. Remember what I said yesterday about many times one of the reasons why people can't unhook from things is because they're coming at it from their virtue? Yeah. That virtue piece, like, I'm a good dude. I'm a good person.
I'm high value.
I'm high value. Yeah.
That's the new one that everybody wants to say.
Everybody. I'm high value. I'm right. The problem is that virtues always have limitations, and the limitations usually show up when you choose another person. The limitations don't usually show up when you're by yourself.
Why do limitations show up when you're with the person?
Because your choices become finite. The moment that you choose another person, you become vulnerable.
Yeah.
And if you haven't been able to metabolize the energy of vulnerability, you begin to make the moves to try and lessen the vulnerability.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so I'm a high value. It's cool when I'm by myself.
Yeah. In theory.
Yeah. But when I'm dating another guy, and that value, and then I'm getting reflected sense of self, and I'm high value, and the person is looking at me is like, you're a mean person.
Yeah.
You're mean. I'm high value though. You're mean as hell.
Yeah.
Like I try and come and touch you and you push me away. But I'm high value. You're mean.
Yeah.
That's because you're coming at it from a virtue. And that's not to say you should not have virtue, but realize that your virtue always has a limitation attached to it. And no matter which way you turn your head, you're never going to be able to see it. What actually has to happen is that people in your life help you take that virtue and help that limitation go offline. So you have to contend with it, right? But what normally happens for people is that the moment that it goes offline, they say, you're making me feel bad about myself. You're not a good person. Yeah. You're not supportive. You don't love me, right? And then they slowly get it right back in alignment and then they can't see it again.
Yeah, yeah. And what I'm hearing and what you're saying, and this is what so many people do, and not as a judgment, but I share, it's creating this monument as your identity.
Exactly.
Right? Like coming up with
outside.
And that's part of the danger of what this kind of last 10 years, part of our cultural narrative around making an elevator pitch for everything, right? Like having to come up with on your Instagram, the quick bio that sufficiently describes who you are. Exactly. And so people can get it. I do this. And it's like you're creating this container of limitation.
That's right.
That really, especially in relationship, constricts any ability to have vulnerability. I want to ask you one more question about vulnerability.
Good.
So we talked about the mechanism of why you want to withdraw vulnerability. In relationship, when that is catalyzed in someone, what does that look like? Someone looking to withdraw vulnerability from the relationship, from the friendship, from whatever the partnership is.
Have you ever been with somebody and things are going well and then something happens and you don't know what the hell it is, but you have a sense that sweetness has been removed?
Ooh.
You don't know what you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the piece. It's not, that's when you're watching people struggle with their vulnerability. The first thing to go is not nice things or saying nice things. The first thing to go that we haven't been conditioned to pick up on vibratorily is sweetness. Think about what I'm saying.
Yes.
We all know it. We all know that piece. The first thing to go is the sweetness.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
not the love, the sweetness.
There is a layer of that sweet authenticity that gets removed. And it's not something that you can fully call out. And whether the person means to or not, they will gaslight you about it, right? Because they're not even noticing.
They don't know it. They have because we haven't been conditioned with understanding the vibration of that.
Yeah.
All we know is that something was there that's now missing, and I don't even know what was there.
Yes. Yes. It's hard to develop the language for it.
And that's why I say the communal pieces, right? Yeah. That we keep trying to figure this stuff out individually, and it's really a communal cultivation that we're trying to do.
This is so good.
Yeah.
My brother Resmaa.
Yeah.
As we close out this episode,
oh, we done already?
I know. That's why everybody wants us to have 10-part. We might need our own podcast.
We can figure it out. Yeah.
If you would share with the audience a piece of soul work, a practice of digesting this conversation and making it a little more exploratory in their lives until we meet again next week.
Absolutely. So one of the first things I want to tell people is that this culture and this philosophy inherently disorients us. There's a constant disorientation. And so one of the things I talk about is that, and it's particularly for Black bodies, I'm talking to Black bodies right now, we have this sense that we walk around and we don't share it with each other. We think it's an individual piece, but it's actually communal. We have the sense that that there's something getting ready to happen. The next shoe is about to drop.
Yeah.
That something is going to happen, right? And I'm going to have to deal with it, right? That is a prevailing kind of embodied sense that we have. And so when I'm working with bodies of culture in my office, one of the first kind of things that I work with them on is orienting, right? So like that couple that I was talking to you about, one of the first things that I've done with them is, and this is just to set the kind of foundation piece, is for them to start orienting. And what does that mean? That means that when you go into someplace or someplace that's familiar or someplace that's unfamiliar, it doesn't matter. Literally stop for a moment and look around the room, particularly behind you. Right? Why is that important? Because we have been conditioned that something is going to happen to us and we better not focus on that, just move forward, right? But yet that energetic kind of sense is still there. So the act of looking behind you can be, over time, you can condition your body to begin to go, oh, there's nothing behind me. I tell Black people to do this all the time, right? Start orienting, right? Let your body, because your body's going to be like, watch it, something's happening, watch it. Oh, I don't call microaggressions. I just call them aggressions. That's an aggression, right? It's coming. Be mindful of, right?
Yeah.
And so what I say is look behind you, look up, look down, notice colors, notice things, and just find the windows, the doors, and the exits. Why? Because we come from nervous systems who, if we stay, we died. If we left, we died.
Yeah.
It's the double bind. So let your body actually see, in this moment, in this time, I can leave.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, some of that beautiful mirror work. Really notice how you feel when you see your reflection.
Or how you try and avoid it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
There's real learning in
any
that.
againstness.
That's exactly
that
right.
Come up. If you find yourself wanting to reject your own reflection, don't judge it. Take the time that you need in between looking at yourself, but begin to get curious about it.
That's it.
Where did that feeling come from, and how can we soften it?
That's it.
How can we dismantle it?
Sure.
Resmaa Menakem's newest book, Monsters in Love, is in stores now. And of course, you can still pick up My Grandmother's Hands, The Quaking of America. My brother, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sis. Love you.
Love you.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Deeply Well. Take your time, really connecting with the practices shared, really connecting with the words shared. There are some things that may start to come up. And as always, get curious. And if it feels overwhelming, get connected and get supported in the way that you're able to have that show up in your life. Meditate, please. Connect to your daily practice, and we'll be back next week. You can connect with me on social at Devi Brown, at Deeply Well Pod, all the things. Would love to hear from you. Thank you for joining. Namaste.